Director General Chi, where are you? Right here. Thank you. We also have Yale Huang, President of the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce of Miami. Do we have Charles Pan? Where's Charles? Board member, Global Taiwan Institute. Sarah Ling Shin Chen, Director, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. Are you up here? Where are you at? You were back there. Oh, yeah, there you are. We got other folks from the Cultural Office. We have Madeline Wu, former president, Formosan Association for Public Affairs in South Florida. I'm trying to think. Bill Hobbs is here. Bill, are you here? Thank you. Senator Manny Diaz, Representative Mike Beltran, Representative Vance Lupus. Is Demi Cabrera here? Where are you? Oh, hi. Good to see you. Representative Bush, Fabricio. Is Ileana here? I didn't see her. Okay. Representative Daniel Perez, Alex Rizzo. We have Speaker Chris Sprouse here, Lieutenant Governor, and our current Congressman, Carlos Jimenez. So thank you for coming. Hopefully you can whip that place up into shape a little bit because it needs a lot of help. We're here today to sign two important pieces of legislation into law, and the goal of these bills is to combat nefarious foreign influence and corporate espionage in Florida. If you look at what's gone on now with the coronavirus pandemic and the cover-up of the origins of COVID-19, it's pretty clear that this was a virus that almost assuredly leaked out of this lab in Wuhan. This is a lab where these scientists were working very closely with the Communist Party of China, as well as the Chinese military. When you had these folks fall ill who were working in that lab last fall, the Communist Party of China decided to cover it up. They didn't give any information out. They didn't ask for any assistance. They didn't give a heads up to anybody. They tried to cover it up. And basically, the world has had to endure over a year and a half of a lot of bad stuff as a result of this. So they covered it up, and they need to be held accountable for this. But I also think if you look at what's happened since then, it's pretty clear that if you go back last year at the beginning of 2020, January, February, there were people scurrying around, and you see this in Fauci's emails, to try to cover up the fact that this may have gone out of a lab. You actually had people saying there's no way it could have come out of the lab, when privately they were acknowledging it very well likely did come out of the lab. And so I think what this has exposed is you do have relationships between a lot of these institutions in China, particularly in the research realm, and bureaucrats in the United States. You have a whole bunch of other institutions. And so our bills today focus on foreign influence writ large. It absolutely, the 7 countries that are identified specifically, of course, the Communist Party of China, but yes, Communist Cuba, Venezuela, all those, and it's all very important. But I think if you look right now, there is no single entity that exercises a more pervasive, nefarious influence across a wide range of American industries and institutions than the Communist Party of China. Academia in the United States is permeated with influence. And I'll go through some of the people. You have researchers getting indicted. This is very common to see researchers at major institutions, including in Florida and also around the country, getting indicted for being in cahoots with the Chinese government. You look at corporate media and the entertainment industry in this country, they are in the pocket of the Communist Party of China. I mean, if Hollywood comes up with a movie that the CCP doesn't like, that gets censored. They are not going to run afoul of that orthodoxy. You look at corporate media in this country, they were on the vanguard of trying to suppress the truth about the lab leak theory. They've got deep financial ties to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, and we just have to call it for what it is. Big tech also runs interference for the Communist Party of China. You know, people were trying to search for the tank man in Tiananmen Square on Bing recently, and it had no results came up. That's very curious. Microsoft said, oh, it was just an oversight, it was a mistake or whatever. Really, that's a pretty convenient mistake to have. But you see time and time again, the big tech giants it seems like when they put their thumb on the scale, they're almost always putting their thumb on the scale in favor of protecting the Communist Party of China. And of course, in the United States, major celebrities, athletes, and business leaders will frequently virtue signal regarding the latest crusade or cause du jour that they have about things in the United States. And yet, almost every one of them falls silent when it comes to calling out the atrocities committed by the Chinese Communist Party. And so all we are doing today is saying enough is enough. We've got to start fighting back. And so the state of Florida is doing that. If you look at the bad influence that we see, we've seen it here in Florida. Just in February, a University of Florida researcher was indicted for taking grant money from UF for his company in China. September 2020, Jacksonville woman pled guilty for trying to illegally export engines to China. February 2020, Illinois court awarded Motorola $764 million in a case after an engineer stole thousands of confidential documents and millions of lines of code to benefit a Chinese company. September 2019, a University of Kansas researcher collected federal grant money while working full-time for a Chinese university. Of course, you see Iran and other countries as well. But I think here, as of now, as of the beginning of this past year, the FBI is investigating 1,000 cases of theft of U.S. technology. And this is almost always theft that's designed to serve the interests of the Chinese Communist Party. So we don't have to look long and far to see examples of this. I don't think they get the attention they deserve. And clearly, a lot of folks in Washington need to do more to be able to combat it. But in Florida, we're going to take a stand. And so we are taking a stand, and these bills I'm signing into law today, foreign adversaries will not have access to our schools, government, and companies like they have in the past. Not the Communist Party of China, not Russia, not Cuba, not North Korea, not Iran, not Syria, not Venezuela. In fact, the first bill that I signed today safeguards our public institutions from undue foreign influence, and that means prohibiting agreements between public entities and the Communist Party of China or Cuba or any of these other malignant forces. And so as of the time we sign this bill and it goes into effect, Florida, we will be banning things like Confucius institutions from being in our universities or in our colleges. And I know we had issues with that right here in Miami-Dade County. So it's the right thing to do. But beyond prohibiting direct deals with these adversarial governments, the bill also makes sure we don't make deals with private companies that are closely tied to these foreign adversaries. The bill also makes sure all nation states, corporations, organizations, and individuals seeking to engage with colleges and universities are fully vetted. We don't want bad actors involved in our colleges and university, and we'll hold you accountable if you run afoul of these new laws. We're also going to sign the Combating Corporate Espionage in Florida Act. It creates new criminal offenses in Florida for the theft and trafficking of trade secrets. Anyone who willfully and without authorization steals or attempts to steal a trade secret and use it for their own benefit will now face a third-degree felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison. If the same person tries to sell the stolen trade secret, they'll face a second-degree felony with even more penalties. And finally, if an individual entity violates this law on behalf of a foreign government, the penalties are significantly enhanced, adding even more time in prison. So I want to thank Speaker Sprowls. I want to thank the representatives and senators here for their attention to this. We knew that we needed to stand up. We knew that we needed to start taking a stand against this because it's really gotten out of hand. And I really hope that we're going to have accountability for the origins of the COVID pandemic, because this did not need to happen. And yes, the Chinese Communist Party is primarily to blame. But there's also American money that very well may have flowed into Wuhan. There were U.S. bureaucrats who were involved at a minimum of trying to divert attention away from the true origins. And so all of those folks need to be held accountable. And I do think China, what we're doing here as a state level is important, it's significant, but there's much more that needs to be done to be able to combat CCP influence within the United States. I'm really honored that we have several Taiwanese representatives here today, both representatives from Taiwan as well as Taiwanese Americans, who can talk about the threats that we face from this Communist Party and from their attempts to exert influence, not just in the United States, but really throughout the rest of the world. And so I'm going to invite Director General Chi to come up and say a few things.
Thank you, Governor. Governor DeSantis and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are here to witness Governor DeSantis signing the two important bills, which have again brought the issue to our attention. The negative influence of China is not only a threat to Florida, it's also a threat to Asia and to the world. Taiwan has been fighting against the threat of China for a long time. We are very pleased that more and more friends in the world have noticed the issue and have joined us. As you may know, China has used its economic influence to undermine the national interests of many countries. Even in the critical situation of COVID-19, China is still trying to use vaccines to influence some countries to sever diplomatic ties with Taiwan. On the contrary, the U.S. bipartisan congressional delegation visited Taiwan yesterday to discuss U.S.-Taiwan relations, regional security, and other significant issues of mutual interest. Would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to the United States for donating 750,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses to Taiwan. Taiwan shares with the United States such common values as freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, the rule of law, and a market-based economy. Taiwan is also an important trading partner and reliable export market for the U.S. in almost every major sectors. Based on the shared values and common interests, the Taiwan-U.S. relations will continue to flourish well into the future. On this beautiful day, I wish all of you good health, happiness, and success. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yale Huang.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Director General Chi. My name is Yale Huang. I'm the president of Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce in Miami. So with the bills Governor will be signing today, as a resident of Florida and a business owner and business people in Florida, it's very important for us for these bills to come into place to ensure there's a fair playing ground for the businesses and to ensure the safety of our business secrets. We have a safe of mind that these penalties will be severe and that it will be ensure the stability of the business here of the Chinese American business owners. And thank you very much. And thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thanks. Madeline Wu.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everybody. And my name is Madeline, and I've been in the United States for over 50 years. And I was born in Taiwan and raised in Taiwan. And I wanted to share some of my experience. When I was in Taiwan, everybody very vigilant about the communist Chinese. And every spy or everything, they will get prosecuted. So that's why Taiwan is stay the way they are today. And another things I'm thinking very important, personally, I think because China makes so much money from the world, and instead of using the money to help their own people, instead they give to the whole world and they try to control the whole world to become a communist. And I think especially, like every day what we have, all the goods we buy is from China. And my personal experience is my daughter just got some bottle sterilizer and the bottle warmer. and they only last for 1 year, so only for one child to use. And when we're going to have the second child, we had to buy a new one. And this material is don't worry about how much CO2 was emitted, but you have to use all the energy, all the material, and they're going to create all the landfills. So, for example, like if you have 5 kids, and then we have to buy 5 sets, so they become very ridiculous. And then China making all those non-lasting, not durable goods, and then making all the monies. And now what happened is they funding all the money to the world. They want to control the world, control to what the government just said, all the education, research, and all the ethics. They don't have too much ethics, because I'm the professional engineer in Florida. I run the consultant business, and I can see all those professionals. Their ethic is not as good as us. So that's why they think stealing is nothing. And that's what we have to worry about. And this bill, I hope, can stop some of it. Thank you.
All right. And she makes a good point about, people getting all this stuff from China now. When COVID hit, there was an unprecedented, and a lot of it was driven obviously by the hysteria and the panic, but there was an unprecedented demand spike for things like masks and all kinds of PPE and all these things. And it turns out we get almost all of it from China. And China started clamping down. They didn't want to necessarily do it. So, I remember being on the phone, talking to these executives, trying to figure out what we could do in every.
As you know, the cultural and economic ties between Florida and Taiwan are extraordinarily strong, and under this governor, he's going to continue to make sure that they remain strong. So thank you again for being here. Obviously, you've heard from the governor in terms of all of the issues that we have seen here in South Florida. He mentioned the Confucius Institute in Miami-Dade College, something that China used in order to provide and indoctrinate the students with this narrative that is contrary to what we believe here in Florida. And we're going to make sure that that only does not happen. It will never happen in the future. These programs, the use of teaching of Chinese language and culture was a tool to expand their political influence. And I'm thrilled that this governor is going to stand strong along with our legislative leaders to refuse that happen ever again here in Florida. As you know, awareness and vigilance will make it much more difficult for our adversaries to continue to propagate their narrative, and the CCP will not be here in Florida. We will not allow them to use our universities, our corporations as a tool to further their agenda. And so with that, I'm thrilled that the governor is going to be signing these bills today. I'm thrilled that all of our legislative leaders are here in support of these very important issues to continue to ensure that Florida is the home of the free.
Okay. Chris Sprouse.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be with you today. Great to be with Lieutenant Governor Nunez, Senator Diaz, members of our House delegation. And here we are talking about foreign influence of the Chinese Communist Party and its influence in Florida. And people who might be watching may think to themselves, well, why does this matter to a family who lives in Hialeah or Clearwater or Pensacola? Here's why. Because that foreign influence isn't just used to influence political leaders. It isn't just used to influence policy like the One China policy to the detriment of Taiwan. It isn't just used to disinvite speakers at our universities like the Dalai Lama. It is used to go into our research institutions and to steal from Florida taxpayers, to steal our hardworking intellectual property, to bring it back to China so that they can use that against American researchers, that they can use that against American businesses and beat America on the world stage. And that's what today is all about. That's why it matters to those families. And this started about 2 years ago when the Florida House of Representatives launched an investigation stemming from Moffitt Cancer Center when 4 researchers were found to have undisclosed, inappropriate relations with the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. Because of those relationships, we uncovered all kinds of information, but we realized something more important, that it wasn't just limited to Moffitt Cancer Center. It was at the University of Florida where there were university researchers who had undisclosed relationships. One of them was indicted recently by federal officials. But even when the employees of the University of Florida were looking into that incident to find out the depth and scope of these inappropriate relationships, their computers and their network were cyber attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. At the University of Central Florida in Orlando, there was a researcher working on autonomous submarine parts who had an undisclosed relationship. When he was confronted, he fled from his wife and his family back to China. Subsequently, his research assistant was indicted for exporting autonomous submarine parts back to China. Whether it's medical, biomedical technology, cancer research, defense materials, all of these things are vulnerable from foreign influence and espionage by the Chinese government. What we realized was whether it was genetically modified corn seeds in Iowa, the person who stole those corn seeds used to be a professor here in Miami at FIU. This has impacted Florida. It's impacted our taxpayers. And if you look across the country, we're not alone. We're not the only state that has suffered this way. MD Anderson in Texas, cancer researchers in Boston, Harvard, MIT. It is pervasive and impacts universities across the country. 70% of universities who've received $250,000 or more from the propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party have failed to disclose that properly to the federal government and to federal authorities. We're not the only state who suffered this way, but we are the only state that is doing something about it. And we're doing something about it because we have an innovative legislature who looks down the road to protect Florida taxpayers, because we have the boldest governor in America, and because we have a congressional delegation who's worked hard to fight these issues in Congress. I'm proud to stand here with you, Governor. I'm proud of how we're pushing back on foreign espionage here in Florida.
Great. Senator Diaz.
Thank you, Governor, and Speaker Sprout. Thank you for your leadership, Governor, because even before this bill is signed today, it was your leadership and your bold pressure that caused Miami-Dade College to remove the Chinese Confucius Institute. I also want to thank our relationship, and we look forward to continue that relationship. Speaker Sprouse, thank you for your leadership on this, coming out right out of the gate and making sure that Floridians are protected. It is important that we not only protect our students and our research, but that we are not spending state dollars on research that ends up in the hands of the Communist Party of China. And also here in South Florida, we've seen influence from the Cuban government, and that's not to be underestimated. And this bill will protect us and make sure that the Cuban regime cannot use Florida to continue to spread its communism throughout Latin America. Le doy las gracias al gobernador DeSantis por su liderazgo, por las razones que estamos aquí, el gobernador DeSantis y la vicegobernadora Núñez eliminamos el Instituto Chino en Miami-Dade College antes de esta legislación. Y le doy las gracias también al presidente de la Cámara, Chris Pauls, por estar aquí hoy. Y es tan importante proteger a nuestras instituciones y nuestras corporaciones de los regímenes comunistas a través del mundo.
Well, thank you all for being here. As you all know, American ingenuity is second to none. We are an information-based economy, and so the value of our products and services is in the research and the development and the engineering. And when that is stolen from us, it causes a devastating effect on our economy. And for that reason, our enemies target our greatest asset, that intellectual property, and they compete unfairly with us and undermine our economy by completely stealing all that R&D we've done and then undercutting our manufacturers and businesses here in the United States. We will permit this no longer. This bill strengthens criminal and civil remedies against foreign agents, and it updates our trade secret laws for the 21st century. I've seen cases in court where somebody has escaped liability for trade secret theft because they didn't steal a physical item like a book or a computer disk or a model, because they uploaded something to a cloud device, or because they emailed it to themselves, or because they used their own jump drive in order to steal their employer's technology. We closed that loophole, which isn't necessarily something targeted at any particular country who passed this bill unanimously. Thank you.
All right.
Madeline.
Madeline?
Yeah.
Okay, Yale. Okay, one more. What's that? Oh, you want to? Okay, well, we get it. So. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. Thanks our legislators for really doing a lot of good stuff. I mean, we've signed a lot of great stuff into law already. I've got more coming down the pike, and we're really excited about what that'll mean for Florida. And I also want to thank our friends from the Taiwanese community, and particularly the fact that they had from their local office here, and then, of course, the Taiwanese Americans who are. It's no different from what we see with Cuban. They understand the stakes with these bad ideas that you see in the Communist Party of China, that we've seen in the Castro regime. And so I think it's great to have folks in our communities who understand the stakes, understand freedom is not something to be taken for granted, and that we've always got to be fighting hard for our folks. And I think we're doing that here with these bills today. And with that, I'll take a question or two. Yes. Well, I think in terms of like intelligence, so this is a military intelligence battalion. When you look, a lot of what China's doing is very closely linked to the Chinese military and the Chinese intelligence services. These companies, when they're acting, they have very close ties to the CCP. I mean, it's not like they're just out doing their own thing. And so this is all very much centrally controlled. You're not going to see major moves being made unless that's got CPP support. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, and Chris can talk. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about it? But and the most significant increase is if you're stealing for a foreign government. And that's what we've seen in some of these instances. And I think Mike talked about how there's times where they're stealing it, but because they don't have a hard disk, that they somehow aren't prosecuted. So Chris, you want to talk a little bit?
I appreciate that, Governor. Like the governor, I spent time as a prosecutor, here in this state. And the reality is when we talk about foreign espionage and especially corporate theft of intellectual property, much of that is prosecuted under the federal system, which is overloaded and overworked. We wanted the ability as the state of Florida, not just of putting through this bill with penalties, which absolutely would include prison time, up to 15 years for someone who steals intellectual property from a Florida-based corporation or from a Florida-based research institution that's funded by Florida taxpayers. This allows us to step into the role as prosecutors to make sure those people are accountable.
Great. Yeah, well, Chris, I think you mentioned in your remarks, you want to talk about some of the stuff you guys were doing?
Yeah, when we kicked off the investigation, I mean, we heard from Moffitt Cancer Center, which is the fourth one, and the first one that came out, and I credit them for being so transparent with us to make sure that we understood this information. But I think so often, the governor has been an accountability governor. Anytime you throw up the couch cushions, you always find things underneath. And the reality is, when we looked into this foreign influence, you saw it everywhere. You saw it at UF, UCF, FIU, at other research institutions across the country. There's billions of dollars pumping into this space. Of the 54 researchers who resigned during the NIH investigation, 93% of them were funded by China. So as we began to look into this, we also realized something else. The federal government didn't have the ability to have real oversight into our state institutions because we're in charge of them. The governor's in charge of them. The legislature is the one that's in charge of funding them. So this allows us to take our accountability role and be an agent of accountability.
I just, part of it, and I think 100% the legislature did great work. But as we saw what happened with COVID, I've always viewed China as an adversary. In fact, I think once COVID really started, someone leaked some Chinese intelligence where they looked at all the governors, and I was one of 5 governors that were considered the most hostile to the CCP. And it's true. I mean, it's true. At the same time, even with that background, if you look at how all of this comes out of this lab in Wuhan, they basically have the WHO is in the pocket of the Communist Party of China. They basically were having everybody look the other way. The WHO, a lot of the U.S. researchers, we see that in Fauci's emails, unfortunately, with folks. And so the idea was to try to whitewash the role of the CCP in this virus. And it wasn't just WHO, it wasn't just bureaucracies. You saw the academic community largely circle the wagons and defend the CCP. You saw corporate media. Remember, there were 60 Minutes, not the most credible news source, I think we've come to find out in Florida. They did a thing saying, oh, no lab leak. And they used the one guy who would have been partially culpable for ensuring this type of gain of function research as the reason why. So they would say it's a conspiracy theory without any basis to say that. And then they would say, oh, it obviously just came from a bad and a wet market without any evidence that ultimately supported that. And you got to wonder, why were they so insistent on trying to characterize this leaking from a lab as a conspiracy theory? Yes, part of it was, the number one instinct for corporate media for the 4 years was anything Trump said they were against. No matter what. Trump could say the sky's blue. They would say, no, that's false, and try to go. So that was part of it. That's just their instinct. They wanted to weaponize COVID against Trump. But I think it was more than that. I do think there's deep relationship between these big media conglomerates, financial relationships between them and the Chinese government. And I think that also was a big reason, why they tried to whitewash that. But when you see all the different ways in which, and then of course, big tech was censoring people who wanted to have inquiries into the lab leak theory, you'd get taken down off social media if you said that. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party, they were the leading proponent of lockdowns. They were advocating them for Italy and all this other stuff. When you were criticizing lockdowns last March or April, you would get deplatformed or you would get censored by social media companies. And so they've run interference for the CCP multiple times. These are some of the biggest, most powerful companies in the world. And then I don't even need to discuss these entertainers and the athletes and these business people. If you're somebody that will light your hair on fire because Georgia is requiring voter ID, but yet you're lining your pocket with money from China and not a peep about the slave labor that's going on over there, you, my friend, are a hypocrite. And you're not somebody that should be taken seriously. And yet that seems to be the normal course of things. And I think a lot of these companies, who've tried to become woke and try to basically get in with some of these far left activists when it comes to things like voter ID, they have a really hard time explaining how, if that's the line in the sand for them, how they could possibly have these business relationships that they do in China, and specifically with the Chinese Communist Party, because you don't get to have big business relationships there unless you have the imprimatur of the CCP. So I think what the legislature did was great. It was long overdue, but particularly I don't see how anyone could have lived through the last year and a half and not come to the conclusion that there's something fundamentally wrong about how this regime is influencing so many different institutions and industries around the world. And so today, Florida says we're fighting back and we're going to make sure the laws of this state reflect that. Thanks, everybody.
Not that I could really elaborate much more on what the governor said, but I'm just going to say it, guys. I watched the event in North Carolina this last weekend. I don't know how anyone can't see this. Why didn't this get done the previous 4 years? Look at all of the lives that we've done. Look at all of the legislation we've signed. Look what we have been able to do as just one state. Why wasn't it done? See how easy it is? It's not hard to create legislation when everybody gets on the same sheet of music. And we create legislation and it has teeth. Look what it just did to the cruise industry. We said, hey, you require passports? Our law says you get fined $5,000 per event. They look at DC and the CDC, they look at us, and they do things our way. Imagine that. Imagine that. And as far as the previous president goes, I don't remember him going back to New Jersey the last 4 years. I don't remember that at all. Not any time of year. Especially given the state of the country now, it ain't that hot down here. It's just not that hot. You see, the reason the last president picked up from Mar-a-Lago and went to Bedminster is because all of the snowbirds that worship him and hobnob with him, they left. That's why he left. And as far as those of you, I can't even believe I'm dealing with this. Florida gets hit by hurricanes every year, every other year, every third year it's a bad year, whatever. It's not weather modification. We have been getting hit by hurricanes since the 1800s. And every time we pick the power poles back up, we put the lines back up, and everything is fine. How many? Matthew, Irma, Michael, how many? And we're still here, and we've got more people, and we're wealthier every single year. We know how to deal with it. And I'll say this again, too. We had Lieutenant Governor Nunez speak. We also had Speaker Sproul speak. In previous lives, we had Senate President Wilton Simpson speak. I wish we could get Blazing Golia, the chairman of the Republican Party, to speak. It's not just Governor DeSantis. I mean, God bless him. We pray for him. We pray for his well-being. But even if he were not governor, believe me, we have got a deep, deep bench of conservatives at all levels of government. I mean, that's why Nikki Fried is the sacrificial lamb that's going to try to run against him in the next election, because nobody can beat him. Yeah, it may lend 36 years of hurricanes. And no, he's not going to go to D.C. and be anyone's president. Flexit is real. Flexit is real. We don't care about Washington, D.C. It is a lost cause. It is a failed experiment. It's over. D.C. needs to be relegated to history. And we need to govern ourselves. And look, if liberals want to govern California, God bless them. God bless them. Florida ain't going to have a word to say about it. If they want to have liberal leadership in Washington State and Oregon and these other places, not our problem. Not our circus, not our monkeys. We don't care. You see, we're not trying to export Florida. Florida for Floridians. If you would like to model your state after what we're doing, look at our Senate, look at our House, look at our town councils, look at our sheriffs, look at our Supreme Court, and begin building from the ground up. You don't start with a Governor DeSantis. A Governor DeSantis is the result of years and years and years and years of hard work. It's not a top-down thing. He is the result of, not the cause of. Keith, just take that crap and go someplace else with it. It's stupid. I live here. You know, rain comes, wind comes, and rain comes and goes, and wind comes and goes, and sometimes it's bad, and sometimes it's worse. It's just life. We have some of the best engineers on the planet, and literally as soon as hurricanes pass by, they come in right in its wake, and they start cleaning up immediately. Everybody, yeah, I'm blind, I live here. Fuck you. Fuck you, I live here. I'm not fucking blind. Do you know how many trees I went out and cut? How many times I've had to stand it up and deal with it? It happens, and it comes and goes. And 1 second. See if anybody's still out there. Yeah, I didn't get the axe. It's just the weather. It's just the weather. I hope everyone's still out there. But I am just so tired, absolutely tired of people whining about weather modification because they can't find anything negative to say about the governor or about what Florida's doing. They continue to try to look for something negative. Somebody said, oh, look, I don't trust anybody wearing a purple tie. The guy literally got up this morning in the dark, grabbed a tie out of the closet, put it on. Oh, but that must mean he's a purple tie. He's part of this cabal and blah, 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 blah. Oh, my freaking God. Seriously, go move to Tennessee. Go move to Montana. Go join the Red Pill Expo people. If you want to sit and continue to look for something to be negative about, whether it's the weather, whether it's somebody's color of their tie, or all this other crap, then, I can't help you. I mean, if that's what you're going to live with, fine. More hurricanes hit Louisiana last year than hit Florida. And their governor is provably a very middle-of-the-road, untrustworthy guy. You would think if anybody was not going to get hit with a hurricane, it would be Louisiana. Their governor is real shady. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous to hear this kind of stuff. But you will have this, and I will caution, this is what I'll leave with. You need to be careful of people like this. Because when good things are done, and things are done the right way, and governance is done properly, there are people who are invested in the idea of doom and gloom, and woe is me, and oh no, the sky is falling. And no matter how many good things happen, no matter how well it gets done, no matter what conservatives do, actual conservatives do, they're going to try to find some make-believe notion or make-believe reason to make you scared and upset and afraid again. Because that's what will get them views. That's what will get them traffic on their channels. And that's just, it's sad. It's kind of how the platform works. If I wanted to be rich on YouTube, I would put up something to scare you and make you feel bad every single day. That's just the reality of it. And as far as the last president goes, I watched his speech in North Carolina. It was on OAN. It was 2.5 hours of the most excruciating, whining, crying, complaining, campaign speech rehash. It was brutal. I had to turn it off. It was so bad. And not one word in 2.5 hours. And he even had Laura Trump up, Eric's wife. Not one word about Florida. Not one word about Governor DeSantis. I follow the president's sons. I follow Laura Trump, I follow Melania, I follow Ivanka, I follow all of them, all associated, all around in his group, and none of them in the last year have said anything positive or supportive of our governor. What does that tell you? Because if it ain't all about Magical Don, he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit. It has to be about his solutions for the problems. Not the solutions, his solutions, with his name attached to it. Be thankful you didn't watch. Because I did. I sat, had it all ready to go with OAN. I pay for Cloud TV just so I can see this stuff. And it was literally, you could have taken that speech and you could have put it in an event last October or last September, and it would not have been out of place. Seriously. Well, I am a little. I'll be honest with you. Because we are doing things the right way here in Florida. This is how governance is done. You put the right people in the House. You put the right people in the Senate. You put the right people in sheriff's offices and in town councils. And then once you have everything taken care of, you elect a governor who will then enact the will of the people. And this is what all of these lives have been about. The will of the people of Florida being enacted. If we can do it, look what we have been able to do just in the last 6 months. Just in the last 6 months. Why wasn't it done anything even remotely like it in the previous 4 years? With a man sitting in the highest office in the land. Why? Can anybody ask why? Answer why? Can anybody expound on why there wasn't legislation signed just like there was now? This legislation will give us the ability to put people in prison for colluding with the Communist Chinese Party and selling trade secrets. Why is this hard? It's not. If we can buck the CDC, what if we had a president that wanted to buck the CDC? We apparently supposedly did for 4 years and nothing got done. You see, this is reality, and this is a hard reality for people to accept. Because even those on the conservative side have this idea that it all has to trickle down from D.C. Those of you talking about two wings of the same bird, the two wings you're talking about are the two wings of fear. If you're thinking that D.C. is the answer, I mean, we need this whole DeSantis for president thing is just nauseating. It literally makes me want to physically vomit. Because that's not how governance is supposed to be. That's why they're called governors. They run their states. And like I said, California can run its state however it wants to. Governor Cuomo in New York, God bless him. They elected him. That's their baby, their bed, they can lay in it. We are supposed to be 50 independent states. It's how it was when we were founded. Florida wasn't even part of the revolution. They didn't even become a state until long after. But take, for example, South Carolina, who was. South Carolina did not do things the way Massachusetts did, yet they were still the New World, the America. See, we just don't care who the president is. We don't care in Florida. It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter. It's just the reality. You know, and somebody mentioned something about Antarctica. I'm watching the comments roll by. Look at the numbers. Go to my channel page. Go to the Florida Maquis channel page. Look at the videos about Antarctica. Look at their numbers. Go look at the other videos and look at their numbers. And you tell me, what would you do? I try to talk about it. I try to continue to talk about it. I think it's important. But the reality is not very many people click on those videos anymore. And they take a lot more effort than videos like this. Because this is what's happening in the real world. What's happening in Antarctica, the reality of it is going to take decades, maybe a century, to come to fruition. And my guess is we'll probably all long be gone by then. But I do appreciate all of you that have joined me at Twitch in the evenings. That's starting to become a lot more of an interesting platform. we're able to actually have conversations like this back and forth. So, Subnautica, yeah, below zero. It's a true survival game we're playing now. And Ed, I hope we can be a role model. But I'm really afraid that people are seeing the governor and thinking, oh, all we have to do is elect a governor like Governor DeSantis and everything will be fixed. It doesn't work that way. That's why the governor tries to bring up other people with him. Members of the House, members of the Senate, his lieutenant governor. It's got to start from the ground up, guys. It's got to start from the ground up. You've got to get a hold of your local town councils first, your local election supervisors, your local sheriffs. You have to create, it's like building a fire. Think of building a fire. You've got to get the tinder first. And then you've got to get, those little bit smaller sticks. You've got to prepare the ground right. You've got to make sure you're someplace where it isn't going to blow out. But you still have to get all that other stuff waiting in the wings, ready to go, so that when your fire goes, you've got it ready to go. But you can't just take one giant log and throw right on top of your tinder. We've got a pretty hot conservative fire burning in Florida right now, but it's taken a long time. It has taken a long time. And you cannot allow the liberals to set the agenda and say what you are and what you're not. There's just things like people say, Governor DeSantis bans transgender girls. No. Governor DeSantis banned boys pretending to be girls from girls' sports. We control the language. Anybody tries to manipulate language in a way, we shut that shit down. And when they try to make-believe stories, we fight back. That thing with 60 Minutes? 60 Minutes wasn't expecting a conservative to fight back. They were thinking it was just going to be a Trump-like response where it was just whining about being treated unfairly. I'm sorry, but Trump is the biggest whiner on the planet, and it has been the best 120 days ever with him off Twitter. Thank God he's off Twitter. Thank God he's off Facebook. Because with him shutting the fuck up, we have been able to get Florida out from under that nonsense and that trash and that garbage. He stood up his own platform. Remember that? Remember he stood up his own desk of Donald J. Trump? And I was interested. I signed up for it. I, put in all of the information so that I could get updates for it. You know what it was? It was fundraising. That's all it was. He took a whole bunch of tweets that he had already tweeted a long time ago and just put them together in a different way. And then it was just nonstop begging for money through email. And then he shut it down. And then she shut it down. Because clearly, he had tapped out the money that he could get. And then he packed up and left for New Jersey so he could be around his hobnobby, liberal, elitist friends. See, that's why Donald Trump cares what CNN says. Did anybody ever ask themselves that question? Why does Donald Trump get so upset about CNN or ABC or MSNBC or any of these other channels treating him unfairly? Why does he care? Do you think Governor DeSantis cares? Do you think I care? Do you think any true conservative cares about what they think or what they say? Why was it so particular to him? Why? If there was any controlled opposition, Trump was it. If there was any person who stood up on behalf of the Democrat Party to represent conservatives badly, it was him. And I think that's something that people are going to have to probably come to grips with. Because, oh, by the way, I know a lot of you out there are anti-vaccine. You should have heard Trump bragging on the vaccine this last weekend, by the way. In his wonderful, beautiful vaccine. And he literally said, if it hadn't been for me, you would have had a Spanish flu-like event to deal with. If it hadn't been for me and my beautiful, wonderful, fantastic vaccine, you would have had a Spanish flu-like event and you would have had blah, 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 more deaths. And I know, and look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. You can get a vax, you cannot get a vax. That's actually law here in Florida. So, anyway, about an hour. I will leave it there because we actually have a real video to do later on today. So, anyway, I just wanted to cover this because I knew it was coming out early this morning and let you guys see it for yourself, that a governor can actually sign legislation holding China accountable. So, God bless, and we will see you a little bit later on.